methods by which humanity has generated the energy for its growing population have been diverse and existed for many thousands of years. Every change in energy production can be tracked to a major event in the history of humanity, all the way from primitive tribal humans up to the modern era that we live in. Nuclear energy is one of the relatively new methods of energy production and has spread to nearly every country in the world. Nuclear energy is created through the fission of the element uranium. The fission of radioactive materials causes large amounts of heat to be produced, causing water to heat up and become steam, which will then be used to turn turbines. The water can be pressurized to produce more energy. However, the act of fission is not completely clean, as it will produce radioactive wastes. Yet the many greenhouse gases that are a byproduct of other methods of energy production are far more harmful to the environment, and according to this chart from whatisnuclear.com, nuclear energy is amongst the cleanest forms of energy. The greatest advantage of nuclear energy is the fact that it can be run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Nuclear energy can be produced anywhere as long as there is a nuclear energy facility. Nuclear energy can become even more portable with the current technology, advancement research, into small modular reactors, or SMM, says the Nuclear Energy Institute. Nuclear energy only came about recently. Nuclear energy began when the first nuclear reactor was created in 1942 on December 2nd. However, the process of creating the first nuclear reactor began earlier than that, with Enrico Fermi was conducting experiments in splitting atoms, which was based on Einstein's E=mc². Enrico and an associate by the name of Leo Szilard began designing the first version of a nuclear reactor in 1941. And a year later, the first working version sprung to life. A cleaner source of energy would be solar. Solar energy is at the forefront of clean and renewable energy for the future of the human race. Solar energy, or photovoltaics as it can be called, is the process of capturing the sun's energy and using it to produce energy, which is not uncommon in nature, as this is exactly what photosynthesis is. The use of solar energy is not uncommon either to humans, and according to Luke Richardson of the EnergySage.com, has been used throughout the course of humanity. Humanity has used solar energy for a variety of uses since the 7th century BC, with many of them, up until recent times, being used in primitive ways, mainly for heating objects. Modern methods of using solar energy only came about around 1883 as solar cells, and the modern-day solar panels we know came to life around 1958, even though they were mainly used to power satellites. The advantage of solar power are that it's completely clean and produces no waste products. It is also renewable and cheap. Despite these major advantages, solar power is not the most efficient, considering solar power can only be gathered during a clear, sunny day. This downside leads to only a select few areas being able to produce energy 24 hours a day. Wind power is the other major source of renewable clean energy production at humanity's disposal. Wind energy can be traced all the way back to 5000 BC, says the Energy Information Administration, which was used to propel boats and is still used today with sailboats. Another main form of using wind energy is in windmills that were used in the Middle East around the 11th century in food production. In terms of wind energies in America, it was used by American colonists for grinding wheat, pumping water, and cutting wood at sawmills. As for modern methods of using and gathering wind energy, there's the windmill. Windmills are massive structures with 3 blades that spin when wind pushes against it, which in turn spins a generator. Some of the advantages of wind energy is that it's clean and efficient in terms of energy production methods. Some disadvantages are that windmills take up a large amount of area, whether they be on land or offshore. Windmills also affect migratory patterns of birds and often kill a large amount of birds. One of the biggest disadvantages is something often related to renewable sources, is that it can't be run 24/7. Instead, windmills can only be run when there is wind present. Geothermal energy is a lesser-known form of renewable clean energy when compared to wind and solar. Geothermal energy is produced from the innate heat that radiates from the Earth. The heat in the Earth's crust is produced from the radioactive breakdown process that happens within the Earth's crust. Geothermal energy plants use this heat to produce steam, which turns a turbine to create energy. Some advantages of geothermal is that it's completely clean and renewable, which, much like solar, has a smaller amount of consequences for the environment. Some of the disadvantages, which are major, is that they can only be used in certain areas around the world, and that they are prone to earthquakes. The use of geothermal energy first came around 10,000 years ago, says Rinkesh from Conserve Energy Future. It was first used by the American Paleo Indians They utilize the geothermal energy from the hot springs to cook, bathe, and clean. The first use of this energy was created by an Italian scientist by the name of Piero Ginori Conti, who created the first geothermal electric power plant. The last clean source of energy I'll be mentioning today is hydroelectric. The use of hydroelectric energy can be dated back to over 2,000 years ago, being used by the ancient Greeks to grind up grain, and it spread to the rest of Europe during the Middle Ages. Hydroelectric energy saw an uprise during the 1800s where it played a vital role in the Industrial Revolution, providing much-needed energy for factories. It wasn't until 1831 when the first hydroelectric generator was created by Michael Faraday. However, it wasn't put into use until 1878. In the 1900s, the hydroelectric generator spread fast in America, leading it to power a large number of households and cities. Hydroelectric energy is created by the falling motion of water, which turns a turbine as it falls. Hydroelectric power generators have a few upsides, being that it's a clean and renewable source of energy. There are more downsides, though, as hydroelectric can cause issues with the fish population areas that they are built. They can only be built in certain areas, and lastly, they are tremendously expensive to maintain, as most hydroelectric facilities are outdated technology. The main way that humanity has been producing energy is through the use of fossil fuels. These include oil, natural gas, and coal. Oil and coal have been the most prominent sources of fossil fuel energy, as well as providing many products that have other uses according to Tom Cool of oilprice.com. Humanity has used fossil fuels, mainly coal, for the most of its existence, from the use of torches to its use of fuel in the form of oil or gasoline. Fossil fuels are a sort of crutch, as we use them most, but they are not renewable forms of energy, and will run out. Fossil fuels have many downsides, the main one being the amount of pollution that is output from the process of refining and use of it burning for energy. The mining of fossil fuels is also a big disadvantage, as it can cause a large amount of pollution and ecological damage. Through the years, humanity has used many different methods to produce energy for their needs, and it continues to diversify every day. I thank you all for listening to my speech.